the burden of HIV is greatest in the southeastern region of the United States, but so is faith. Faith is most prominent in our country in those 16 to 14 states that the country classifies as southeastern. And so we wanted to take a more intimate look at the intersection of faith and HIV through the power of storytelling, which we've heard so much about throughout this program today. It's about a 25-minute documentary. We're going to hear the stories that have been offered, and then we're going to have some panel discussion afterwards. Enjoy.
Maybe hit them lights. Let me see, just try.
Come on.
According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the southern region of the United States makes up roughly 40% of the U.S. population, but accounts for 45% of all people living with HIV in the country, and 51% of new diagnoses, more than any other region. Pew Research reports that Black Americans are the most religious racial ethnic group in the U.S. This includes Black lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex or asexual, and persons living with HIV/AIDS in the South who rely on their personal faith to navigate issues around health and wellness, but sometimes lack the support to safely explore the intersection between HIV and faith in their community. In partnership with Wake Forest University Gilead Compass Initiative, Southern AIDS Coalition, ROM, the United States Conference on HIV Faith Coalition, and National Faith HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, we invite you into a safe space for storytelling, where advocates, faith leaders, and people living with HIV address the challenges inherent in responding to the HIV epidemic in the southern U.S. as people and communities of faith. This is my faith, my story.
His name is Abdul Fahmy Hassan. Born in 1951 to parents who were heroin. As a child growing up in that time, he began using drugs at the age of 14. At 16, he started using heroin. By the time he was 25, he was a full-fledged addict that was in and out of prison. While doing a 12-year sentence, he learned he was HIV positive when using drugs. He also worked at slum, but he still had problems being off heroin once released. He began to read and study everything he could on HIV. The doctor told him in 1994 he had about 5 years to live. And it's hard to do better because of his faith. He felt like HIV was a blessing because it allowed him the opportunity to take a deep look into himself, even though he knew he didn't have the coping skills to live out there on his own. So he made a conscious decision to get help. He checked into the Evan House Rehab Center to assist him with his drug and mental health problems. He graduated 3 months and was blessed with a job in the outreach department for HIV. Praise God that this changed his whole life. As an HIV positive man and a Muslim, now it's about helping others to overcome the stigma and shame and to be able to teach, educate, and inform others that HIV is not a death sentence. You have to take care of yourself and love God every day. He hopes his story helps someone to live their life and serve and help others. May God bless us all with peace and success in this life and in the next. And
my name is Amara Christianity, and I am a member of IFA. I also happen to work for a global nonprofit that focuses on addressing HIV and AIDS across our country.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Holland. I'm from Greenwich, Alabama. I'm working with the Alabama Department of Public Health in the Office of HIV Prevention here. I am in the HIV clinic.
So I'm Ian Flores Cuentas. I'm originally from Puerto Rico and currently live in Nicaragua.
My name is Shirley Savage. I work with UAB 1917 as a coordinator of education, and I am here to reduce the stigma and talk about what's going on in the South.
Parents, family, South Carolina.
Christopher Henry, I serve as chaplain and education specialist at UAB 1917, and also serve as pastor at Baptist Church here in Birmingham, Alabama.
My name is Andy Lewis. I'm coordinating pastor for the United Church of Christ.
For Marion E. Anderson, Hyman Harvey, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I serve as the co-minister for the National Office of Trade of Farming Ministry from the Relay Bishop, Yvette Flunder of TPAM. I also serve as the senior staff for Alabama State Director for the Human Rights Team.
So my HIV story began outside was 2003. It was a very dramatic experience.
I'm from a very small community, rural community population, about 1,800. Alabama's with HIV, and my neighbor, I've been dealing with HIV for 22 years now.
That found in Puerto Rico. Coming from a Latino family, it was a huge shock.
So I was the one, that describes my diagnosis for my grandmother. She said, he's pastor, he was on the graduate, and he didn't come. He was like, we're going to pray for her. She stayed on, we'll pray for her on my part.
I've been alienated because the pastor would say that we're not, welcome, or we don't say that around here. We don't want people to be afraid of touching anything.
I am a fourth generation pastor. I knew going into the United Church of Christ and the Christian church, I knew that they were not open, affirming, and accepting.
So the more people those that's really become devoted what we call an acute HIV infection. And so 2 weeks later, I wrote on the chairperson, just the department, I hold a position on the results, which worked in front of so I was able to do that, and I'm very conversation. And from there on,
Do you feel that the importance of someone really that have no right? Absolutely. I really like to think of it as we're working around health and wellness. And wellness encompasses the whole being. So if we're only looking at how we can address one aspect of the whole being, then it still means there's fragmentation in the totality of the health and wellness of the whole being.
AIDS, my HIV diagnosis is very important because, I'm not really on the page to, to get me to from point A to B, because there are several different diagnoses that have come along since my diagnosis of HIV, even with AIDS. I'm in mental health depression. There have been even stroke issues. There have been issues of people thinking that I didn't even disclose my status.
well, I came to 1973 2002 for this first course talking with pastors about what we can do to do this thing by experts in HIV and how we can more open towards our congregation to follow with the HIV positive, but because it's good to service, we that you speak out and share about the disclosures that you fear of being judged or being put out of a congregation.
Here, that's just a little bit about the thoughts around stigma and self-stigma.
So stigma for me it's something that I really hate. And moving from Puerto Rico to North Carolina was a huge difference. For example, when I came to North Carolina, someone knocked on my door and from the public asked me, hey, in North Carolina, we have laws here in North Carolina, and the kids are HIV, therefore we have some stigmatized. We don't have that laws anymore in North Carolina, but I feel like I was doing something wrong and that I need to beat that hard. And to this day, a lot of people feel like that, and that's why I'm tested on their shared status.
I learned that since I was diagnosed with my HIV and several different churches and faith-based organizations that are stigmatized. They don't allow or tolerate or can't even disclose and tell people your HIV status. They will shut you out.
So I didn't achieve my diagnosis until 2014. So I was isolating myself from even going to school or getting into relationships. I isolated myself. I didn't want to talk about HIV. If I see it on the TV commercial, I didn't know that was church channel.
My faith in the church was like, I'm back to where I could be accepted. It would be accepted. And, the what if happened when they find out your status and they're not going to want you there.
I grew up in a different country where people something to time in such a remote and that protects us to some the country was something important, and it may always in many other ways. I was struggling with being authentic much of my whole life because of that way of operating. And I wish that I were a bit more open and more authentic.
That just made me feel like that, the church didn't basically put out myself for healing and prayers that I wasn't accepted anymore. And so I didn't go to church for a while, and it wasn't until probably about 3 years ago, I think, that I realized I was really angry with pastors. I didn't, I always had something wrong with him. And I'm like, okay, he's not going to accept me, so. And every time I would try to go to church, they would say, you need to tell us all your problems and tell us, the secrets. I'm like, really? So that you can put me out?
As a hospital chaplain, who dealt with people with liver cancer, stigma. I dealt with stigma with my mom, who just recently died with COVID with her roommate. It doesn't have to be HIV for stigma to come into your life, into your family, and into your life. But we, as people of faith, are all joined together on this earth to deal with stigma of all kinds.
It's been a struggle with that. I know I'm a religious person, and I'm a Christian, and I just believe, I can get my praise and worship at home if need be, but, I still wish that, I would be accepted.
As a Muslim, the most important aspect of being a Muslim is to be open to helping people have a better, stronger relationship with God. And having a Muslim spirit that is humble is contrary to that message.
In our country, people really want somebody to talk to. They want to share their information, but they want to be able to trust that if give this information to someone and they can discuss them with their
The essence of what I really hear from my brothers and sisters that are living with HIV is just wanting to be loved, wanting to be honored, wanting to be respected, and wanting to be seen for who they are, and not the virus thing.
But my HIV status, I've been able to disclose to church members when I'm participating in church. Sometimes they look at this sadness because they don't understand how far we have come with medication that we can live a normal life. And that's one of my goals to let them know, especially the Latino community, that there's medication that people should get tested on your status and live a healthy life.
When I, Berman mentioned that people die from HIV/AIDS and cause, that doesn't happen. I mean, the vast majority of people who contract HIV/AIDS live in their own home persons. And that again talks about how much progress has been made in this community because of science, because of research, about healthcare providers and workers, and everyone else who's across the spectrum who have given themselves to educate the community about HIV. We do have communication for workers to prevent HIV. And so that is becoming part of one of my important messages to congregate.
But when the need comes, how do we assert that, in such a traditional structure of a tabernacle? Well, there's always opportunities such as Sunday school, Bible study, pastoral care, pastoral teachings, which is generally traditional in the South, somewhere between Thursday and Friday. There are opportunities. I mean, even how we as the persons of the gospel preaching a text, there are plenty of texts that we can incorporate to help reduce HIV. Sexually transmitted infections is a taboo in the Black church.
That is a message for me as a musician when I'm talking to medical students or residents, not to stigmatize their patients and whatever it is that they are looking into. Because the society stigmatizes for the reason.
Although we may think this might not be your application, based on the policy that are limited in the community, this is a freedom application. And we would have members who have needs.
Did you bring a power strip?
You did not need those, so the communication might be focused based on stereotypes, judgment, because of stigma, and people with HIV had legitimate spiritual needs that needed to belong to a congregation, participate in various ministries in those churches.
Me now letting other people know that I'm living with HIV, that I'm healthy, and that I'm able to worship and love her. That's what kept me going.
Oftentimes, a silent voice feels like that there is nobody else that's around. And so what we see is that we see high rates of suicide. We see sexual transmitted infections increasing in Black churches, specifically speaking about the Black church, because that's important. And what happens is that they die alone. Because we're not talking about it, because I heard the word, we cover it up.
I do worry about, I think now we can put in HIV, the problem with HIV is the stigma that makes people not be open about their sexual life, and therefore makes them less aware of resources, preventive measures that can protect them.
While we're here on earth, it's our responsibility to resurrect people. And that means that we have to talk about HIV.
Our space as a faith institution is not good enough just to be a house of worship. That it needs to be a safe space that people from all backgrounds, no matter what their journey, no matter what their life experience, feel that they can come and get what they need.
We need to have support groups and even different churches and stuff to where we can reach out for community resources.
Building community engagement. We have to continue to do the work that all of us are called to do. Ministers are not the only ones that are called to do this sacred work. This sacred work happens to be all of our jobs. Those of us that are working in drug rehab, those of us that are working those find housing that are so hard, the upliftment of spirit, the upliftment of the mind, in tandem with continuing to support and love to ensure that our brothers and sisters with HIV are also doing all that they need to continue to stay healthy. And most importantly, or equally as important, is having that circle, having that tribe that is elevating the power of the mind, the body, and the spirit.
And it's kind of like what church is called trust. In the state that I work in, sometimes they, you want me to move quickly with this, and I like to build a relationship. It takes a while. I get corrected, I get checked, I get told something every day. I don't have that good experience, but empathy, I try my best to put myself in your shoes and feel something I can't do.
What type of work do you feel like could do to help? And
I think faith community has a critical role in this work. How can we do better about how we handle our crisis like this? How can we do better about reaching out to those in our faith community? We have to keep trying. This is a work in progress.
We got to stop limiting ourselves on what we're going to do to be innovative. If a pastor needs to get up and make a sermon about it because it's happening in his or her community, do it.
I think that we have to stop focusing so much on what divides us and really focus on what connects us.
We both carry the message of love, and that's the beautiful thing.
I just think you can go back to separate and open the doors. When they say the doors of the church is open, it should be open to all.
It doesn't mean you stop believing in what you're doing. It doesn't mean you stop doing the work that you're called to do.
I think once it's pastor, it's recognizing my limitations. I know what I'm good at doing. I also know what I'm not good at doing. And if I can partner with someone who can do it better than I can, I'm
For those leaders who are leading congregations, that's the senior pastor all the way down to the Sunday school teacher at all levels, it's a professional job. It is important. There's a lot of tools out there to have conversation around HIV and religion and faith. And if you need that information, just seek for it, but make that part of your professional development. Oftentimes as those that preach the gospel, we have to continue to study, and because the trends change, the word of God's going to remain the same, but we got to know how to be able to expound on it, where the listeners can be able to eat from it. I will also say for the pastors who do pastoral counseling, have a reform manual that actually have some health disparity referrals in there. Us who do pastoral care, a lot of times we're not licensed to diagnose, but we are permissioned to get the appropriate referral, and as a pastor, we can follow up with that member and to them, their client.
And I think that we have to recognize, and I really come from this from a life experience, that the essence of any powerful and impactful movement throughout history, at least in the American history experience, has been stemmed out of the Black faith institution. Whether it's the Black church, the Black mosque, or what have you. And so I think we've got to go back to what we know. And I think that ripple effects also into non-Black American faith experiences. And so I think we've got to go back to that core of really, again, not worrying about who someone is, not worrying about how someone contracted HIV, but recognizing that we are our brother's keepers, we are our sister's keepers, and that we've got to connect in a way as being spiritual beings, again, living this human reality, and loving, empowering, and supporting each other in that term.
I'm the person folks like to hear God. You all to put our roots and to certainly be less judgment in the way they talk to members of the congregations and stuff like that.
I choose to not allow people to stigmatize me because, I am more than my diagnosis. HIV is just a thing to me. It's a regular part of everyday life.
I've learned in the early years that I'm more like, invest the thing. Yeah.
Once again, when I was doing, you know, that was for me to say, in a congregation where I didn't know different until where they say emergency, so everything is running.
It can no longer be taboo. It can no longer be hush behind closed doors. Talk about this at your dinner table, Thanksgiving, Christmas, baptism day, Lord's Supper, and all of that Easter program. Get a speech together. We have to start incorporating this diet. It's relevant alcohol. And if the gospel is going to be relevant, then allow that to heal us and not allow a disease or infection per se to kill us, because again, we are overcomers and the sickness is not of death. There is a glory behind it, because it is surprising to read.
Until we start the conversation and start having experiences, so understand that yes, say the word is real, please can say it to me right.
Sometimes, particularly in the Black American experience, has gotten a bad rap around this work, really addressing HIV and AIDS, really addressing the issue of stigma. But I know numerous Black-faced leaders across this country that are in the trenches, not only within their faith institutions, but also in the broader community, of really working hand in hand with public health leaders and community folks in their community to really address the issue of HIV and AIDS. We're called. And I think that's the word that I want to use. We're all called to do this work. Continue the work that you do. In every community that you touch, someone sees the work that you do, someone sees the work that you're doing, and someone will reach out and touch you in some way and join forces with you to give you a lift. And that's what I want you to remember.
Go and tell the story. This is what HIV is about. This is what it's about. We are ambassadors, and as a result of that, transformation is happening. It's taking place in all the communities, and we celebrate that. Yet, there's still more to be done, and we are certain. My faith, my story.
My faith story.
My faith, my story.
Being historian, being fair.
My faith, my story.
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 His faith, his story.
One more time, give it up for my faith, my story. I thought that was very fitting for what we're getting ready to unpack. And while he's getting ready to lift this up, I want, while he's doing that, give me one person. What did you take away from that video while we're preparing? Come on, somebody has a faith, somebody has a story.
Learn.
What'd you say?
Learn to make transcendent translation into yourself and be a model when others may want to see it.
All right.
How do we get the video thing?
I just want to say, believe.
Believe. It's like
You start your own story. Yes, ma'am.
I think I just took away HIV is what I have, not who I am.
Very good. Very good. That's it. I'm excited to announce the panel. Oh, one second. He's calling me.
Oh, you don't?
No, I need you to pull the screen up.
Oh, you
So
want
we can start, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very good.
Anybody know how to work those lines? I tried. You don't try.
Amen. You have to be patient Very good. Now, if we could take the stage, my experts in their own story, Dr. Cynthia Belts, Dr. Ulysses Burley, and my very good friend all the way from Georgia, Miss Tammy Kenny. That's right, give it up, give it up. Very good. And while we're talking, I need somebody to take a good picture of all of us. Get my pretty side. I'm excited to be here. You better laugh. I'm excited to be here because I realized something within this documentary. It was their stories. And I didn't believe I had a story. Because I'm a heterosexual woman, cisgender, married, 4 kids, 5, 3 were brought in. Live in Georgia, but I'm not living with HIV. So I didn't think my story was important of how I got into the work, why I'm still in the work, and I'm not gonna stop until I die out of the work. Until I began to think about this session, because my story is important. How I got started. 2015, I was doing community work with young people. Mental health, domestic violence, research building, relationship building, but nothing connected to HIV, I thought. Until a lady on the end we were going to the same church. And she said, can you start talking about HIV in young people? And I said, well, what is it? She said, between the ages of 14 and 24, the positive cases are exploding in the South. So since my initiative was with young people, I did my research and it amazed me. From that, I began to just put it out there about HIV and mental health and relationship building. But it wasn't until another friend contacted me. She said, I need you to do a financial literacy course. I said, not a problem, that's what I do. But what the caveat was, is they were all HIV positive people. So I had my own biases. I was a black preacher in the South. How I thought was just it was a gay disease. It was men. Until God walked me in that room. I saw older, young, black, white, female, male, married, single, same gender loving. And that's when the door of opportunity began in my life and my story changed. From that moment, I was asked to be a part of the Positive Living Conference. Saturday night, everybody was getting down. If you ever been to a conference, they know how to party, honey. You think you know how to party. Go to Fort Walton. They were partying. Earth, Wind, and Fire, everybody had on bathing suits, they were jamming. And all I heard was just laughter. But Sunday morning, which was my session, I was sitting on the back of the balcony, and all I heard was worship. All I saw were people walking and praying and had their hands up in the air, surrendering. And it was at that point I sat at my balcony and God said, I called you to love and not to judge.
Yeah.
And I began to weep. So that's my story of how I was pushed into the work of being an advocate as a faith leader in the South of HIV. Dr. Belts, what's your story? And who are you?
My name is Cynthia Belts. I'm a pastor in Maryland. I pastored 2 churches. But I got involved in work around stigma, not just HIV, but other avenues of stigma, because in 1996, my oldest son died of complications of AIDS. And so I spent a lot of time, I did my clinical pastoral education at Children's, and one of the first tasks that we had was to be in relationship with a group of young men that were in a support group who were all HIV positive. And they taught me some things about who they were, because very often in the faith community, we look at people's sin, what they do, rather than who they are. And then in 2008, my nephew died from complications of sickle cell. And my sister-in-law has been involved in sickle cell advocacy since he was born. And that just, again, reminded me that this work around stigma is important work. 2016, a nephew died from complications of AIDS. This is one family, y'all. This is one family. And so because of that, we begin to understand that from the faith perspective, we have to stop judging people based on what they do or what they have, and start using the language of grace and love as opposed to the language of sin and condemnation. Just in the past 3 years, there is a huge stigma just around a COVID diagnosis, where you have people just afraid to say, you know what, I tested positive for COVID. The health issues involved in that, where not only do they not say, but they don't stop doing their normal activities, is enormous. And so I've spent a lot of time over the past 3 years helping educate, not just around COVID, but around autoimmune diseases that are stigmatized.
We're gonna say that because that's the turnaround. Dr. Burley, no, Dr. Burley, you tell us what brought you to the work and who you are.
Sure, Ulysses Burley, I'm founder of You Be The Cure, which is a Chicago-based consulting company on the intersection of faith, health, and human rights. I also serve as the chair-elect of the United States HIV and AIDS Faith Coalition and service project director of the HIV Vaccine Trials Network Faith Initiative. I am a clinician by primary training in allergy and immunology. Always wanted to be a doctor. Was studying to be a cancer doctor because my mother and subsequently many other family members were victims of breast cancer when I was growing up. So I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to help people like my mother. Was studying cancer and was scheduled to go to South America for a one-year clinical fellowship working with people who were living with cancer. Got down there, things had gotten lost in communication and whatever I was supposed to be doing relative to cancer, I wasn't going to be able to do. And so I was still there for a year. I needed to make the best of it. And an opportunity came for me to work with people living with HIV. It was the first time that I had ever interfaced with HIV clinically. But I wanted to make the best of the year that I was in South America as a doctor in training. And so I said, okay, I'll do this work and then I'll go back and finish my cancer training to continue to reach my goals. It was a year that changed my life. It was the first time that I had been exposed to the social determinants of health, that is those social ills that make people sick within their bodies, racism, discrimination, sexism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, religious persecution, government corruption. And it was clear that no matter what I did for patients in my care, I was always going to send them back out into a world that made them sick. And so I began to think, if I'm really called to heal people and to help people, I don't know that I can fully do that in a hospital alone. So I started thinking about how it was that I could address social ills. So going into that one-year clinical fellowship where I was supposed to be working on cancer, my goal was to learn better ways how to cure cancer. When I left, after having spent a year caring for people living with HIV, my goal was to learn better ways to cure poverty and to cure discrimination and to cure disparities. Because it was clear to me that inequality was what was fueling some of these medical diseases. And that if we didn't address the diseases downstream, then we were always going to have disease upstream. So when I came back to the States, I was convicted. Long story short, I changed my career path from cancer to immunology and continued to pursue ways in which I could help treat people and not just disease. And the faith community for me became a very good vessel to do so. I went on to do HIV and AIDS work with the National Christian Denomination with international reach, and subsequently served as presidential advisor to Barack Obama on HIV and AIDS, and then started my own organization, Beauty Care, to treat people and not just disease. So, a lot of other stuff in there, but that's kind of how I got there.
My name is Tammy Kenny, and I didn't know I was going to be on the panel, but I'm so grateful to be here. I'm the founder and visionary of an organization in the rural area in Georgia, Rural Women in Action. I'm also a part of the Long-Term Survivors, the Reunion Project. I'm a certified peer specialist in mental health. I work in forensics. But I'm also a woman that was diagnosed with AIDS in 1987. I didn't have a bad experience when the doctor told me, have you heard anything about AIDS? Have you heard anything about HIV that causes AIDS? I said, no. But the thing about that, not only am I a black woman diagnosed with AIDS, I was a heroin addict with mental health problems. And I come from a family of ancestral trauma. And I suffered in silence. I was quiet about my diagnosis. But today, I'm 12 years clean and long-term recovery. I used to always say, I'm not working for nobody but Jesus, and Jesus held me a job. I've been there 6 years. But all these things I'm saying about myself is the stigma. Not only that was injected into me through society, my peers, and institutional stigma, I survived. And I wanted to share my story in the church, but I knew it wasn't time because the church hurt me when I needed help.
All right.
So I went to my friend, Sandy, but Dr. Sandy, right? And what she said is true, because the church that I'm still a member of, they weren't talking about it, but we had young people in the audience, in the congregation that were 15, 16-year-old, and they were pregnant. So I said, well, they have enough to say.
Yeah.
But you left out one main part. She preached 2 Sundays after that about stigma, because I was afraid to disclose in my church. And she preached the sermon.
Hello.
Then we had an HIV testing event about a month later. Okay? So I'm going to pass the mic, but I do want to say this. My story, my lived experience, brought me back home to save the people. And what I mean save the people, to let the people know I love you. See, we have a bigger epidemic. We have an epidemic of a lack of love.
Amen.
And that comes from the church.
Because all she's getting ready to say is it's going to open up. So now you see why these are your panelists for today. Can you give it up? So much to unpack. My first question, it was an epiphany for you. You were somewhat doing the work, but it was your family. It was your life. At what moment did you say, this is it and I'm not turning back? For you, and then Tam, I'm going to go.
I would say when my son was lying in the hospital dying.
Had it been another child, would that be your epiphany story?
Yes.
You would still feel the same way? Okay.
Yeah, because immediately after that, I had a call for chaplaincy at Children's. very first patient, a 2-year-old child, died from AIDS.
When you are, never negate that your story is important. No matter how you get into the ministry world, every step, every path is a part of your story. So I can't pour from your story and make it my story. It wouldn't be efficient. But your story matches your life journey. You be. You in school, you doing your thing. You just living. But he sends you somewhere for one assignment. And he says, booyah! At what point did you have to go back and tell your wife that this is not what we're going to do anymore? What did that look like?
Yeah, she was easy. My parents were not. When I told them that I felt like God was calling me.
You're not a preacher.
Not a preacher, but I'm a person of faith. And I felt like God was calling me to do something outside of fight the insurance companies all day long and doing the healthcare bureaucratic red tape to just make a lot of money. One day, and I come from a family of professionals and had a very narrow understanding of what success was. You could be doctor, lawyer, engineer, so on and so forth. And so they were just worried, all your life you wanted to do this, we've invested in you to do this, and you want to walk away from clinical medicine to go and be an HIV advocate for people of faith. So my wife was easy. She believed I was brilliant and whatever I decided I was going to do. Good that she's right. But my parents were a different story. And really it was other people's stories that started to, because I resisted for a while, because I had to process everybody else's opinion. And is this the right thing?
Everybody else's opinion and everybody else's biases, everybody else's maybe stigmas.
Stigmas, but also be mindful. You talk about a story of familial impact by HIV and AIDS. I have a familial impact of cancer, breast cancer. And so for my family, I was supposed to be the savior. Right. The savior. And so walking away from that was almost walking away from them. Exactly. So I had to deal with that. It wasn't until I was appointed to Barack Obama's presidential advisor. And my parents were like, okay, all right. But it was really other people's stories. I've changed. Sandy talks about how she came into this work with her own bias. I'm a cisgender, heterosexual man, not living with HIV, covered in all the privilege of my upbringing and my education. And I wasn't where I am now when I first was introduced to this work, especially as it relates to how to reconcile what I believed my faith was telling me about sex and sexuality and identity and gender, to then be able to accompany the very people who my faith had outcast authentically around HIV and AIDS. And so I was being changed, and I liked how that change go. And so I think that was, for me, outside of that year in South America that was never supposed to happen like that, was when I decided that I was going to lean all the way in and do this full time. So I haven't seen a patient since 2016.
What? And I'm going to switch it up. All that you went through, would you be here? Would this be your story if those were not your journey moments?
Ooh, wait. It wouldn't be. It would be another story. Okay, when you look at the different change of events that happen in your life, you say, And I'm very transparent. A drug dealer put me into rehab, number one. My doctor said, why are you taking the medication? You're not adhering. What you want to do, live, die? What are you going to do? Number two. Well, my family said, we're going to keep praying for you, you're going to get better. Now, if I didn't wake up with those three things, then my life was meaningless to me. And I have 3 sons who think that I can just make things happen.
Amen.
And I did not know how to ask for help for myself. But those 3 things led me back home. And I said, I gotta start over. I gotta work on the mental health. I gotta work on the internal stigma, the shame, the guilt. If I woulda, shoulda, coulda, but I didn't. I had to forgive myself for how I did myself. You know, we can always say what people did to us. They hurt me. They took this from me. But then my sponsor said, look at all the things you took away from yourself. Living in internal stigma and denying yourself the opportunity to live. I made a change.
All right.
So far, so good. My next, you were getting ready to talk about coming back home and the work that you knew God had placed in your heart with the experiences. You just can't come back home and be empty-handed. You have to come back home and bring some stuff. Dr. Bellis, you are now working in this industry. How easy is it for you, or how difficult is it for you, not now, but when you started, to bring it home?
It was hard. I was in when my son died, I was in my first year pastor. So all the stigma, she got a gay son, she's supposed to be a pastor. My colleagues, I looked up and there were 20 of them.
Fake leaders?
Yes. 20 of them. We here with you. That made the difference.
Did you take that experience and did you educate your congregation, or did you just do this silo of, I'm just going to keep quiet?
No, my congregations are very clear about where I stand. If you talk to anybody that's ever sat under my teaching or preaching, I'm very clear. And I've had congregation members who were HIV positive and who felt comfortable talking to me because they knew that I wouldn't out them, number one, and that I wouldn't judge them.
Dr. Burley, you are a doctor, medical profession. How important is it for you to marry the science with the faith?
Yeah, for me, they are bedfellows.
Bedfellows.
Bedfellows. They are one and the same. One of the core tenets of all faiths is that of healing and abundance of life. And at the root of scientific discovery and medical advancements is healing, and also life and life abundantly. So for me, faith and science were really one and the same. But what the science and the medicine lacked, the faith supplemented in terms of being able to treat people and not just disease. And so,
That's not right. Treat people and not just the disease. I think one of the keynote speakers were talking about the holistic person and who you are. Expound, I know you got some other stuff, but let's talk about that. Being more than my diagnosis.
yeah, so I used to stand at the bedside of patients when I was a physician in training and even a resident. And it was clear that many of the people who I learned from, my professors, they had openly professed not being believers of anything higher than science, which was fine. But it was really off-putting for me to see them project their unbelief onto patients who were openly expressing how it was going to be faith that was going to carry them over. Because they weren't wrong either. You needed the science, but you also need to believe that the science can do what it's supposed to do. And I think the misconception is that for people of faith who reject science, because that's a thing too, that by accepting science we reject the power of God, and then people who don't profess to a faith, who subscribe to science, believes that it diminishes their training, their expertise to give something ethereal credit in a healing process. And so for me, you need both. And the science that we've been given is a tool from God, a tool from a higher power to be able to help ourselves down here. But you have to have some belief that you can get better, that you can be better. And so part of my departure from clinical medicine entirely was because I understood that as long as I was operating within this context of only medicine and science, I was only covering some of the whole person, not the whole person. And now I feel like the work that I do is more authentically addressing the whole person, not just physical ailments, not just diseases, apart from the stories that led people to my care.
Tammy, Dr. Burley said something. We also know that some people will take the faith, but won't take the medicine. Will take the medicine, won't take the faith, if that's your belief. A person that is thriving for over 20 years, how effective is the medicine to the survival of who you are?
I had to form a relationship with my medication. That meant that when I got hurt by the church, I had to rely on medication. Instead of connecting, as you said, the pharmacy and faith and the science and faith, because I had to believe in something. And when I was hurt from the church, I said, well, this medication, I'm going to do it, it's going to save me. But then I found myself wasn't adhering to the medication. So I had to come back to the faith and say, Lord, help me so I can be adhering to this medication. And I couldn't go to anybody in the church, so I believe in my friend sitting in the audience, Stigma God, and said, sometimes you got to go through other people. I had to go through Sandy so I could get my message across to the church, right? And with the medication, I'm faithful to it, even though sometimes I look at it and say, not today. You know, like being in a relationship, you get up in the morning, you decide you don't want to cook for him. Not today. But, and I want to be really transparent, okay? If I sit up here and say, I take my medication religiously every day, because that's another part of the stigma. But what I can say, the medication works. It works. Having that faith and believing that you have the power to live is just as great as taking the medication.
And what I'm going to do, I'm going to give y'all an opportunity to be engaged before we close it out. Do you have anything you want to say? Any questions at this moment? Feel free. Yes, ma'am.
you all because you all represent us to give us that support, that person that has our back. And so I want to say thank you. Of course, you know I love you, Tammy, so, but I want to tell you, both of you, thank you so much for, even though you don't have to live the experience, you're going through the experience with us, and I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say, I remember it's going to be 19 years, but it took me 16 years in the New Year's, going to New Year's Eve at my church. Some of the members knew it. My pastor was the first lady. So when they asked you, did you have a New Year resolution, and what were your goals for coming in 2020? I got up and I sat back down. I was stand up.
You said this is 2020, you said this?
Going into 2020.
So 2019 going into 20, okay.
And I sat down and God said, God, I want you to stand up, God, I want you to tell your story. I want people to see what God has done for you. So by the time it got around to me, I had okay, so I didn't know how people were going to receive it. But when I disclosed, everybody was shocked because everybody, you know, I'm like, yeah, you know, 2003, I was not even 2008, I was full blown age, and right now I'm undetected. So, oh my God. It's like since I opened that first door, the door just been opening. I just did a photo shoot for Lead Healthcare Rich to Read. Stigma Free Miami in Miami. My billboard now. You got a billboard. Come down, please come down to New York to see my billboard. And then I did one for SOS, Sisters Organizing to Survive. And that was I Am a Survivor campaign. It was 5 women, all of us living with HIV, together combined. It was 100 years. But if you looked at us, you would never knew. No, and I just got inducted into the SOS, no, Leading Women's Society to Love. And I'm like, I ain't don't know what like this. So now I'm not ashamed to say I don't know my story is something like that. Because I am the number one. Louis said 14 and 22. My story can save somebody else right.
The mission.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Elisa Sally. I was invited here today by some special people, and I have learned so much throughout the week. But my concern is, had I not known those people, I wouldn't know this existed. We have to do more media advertising, commercial. But I know they're expensive. News media, even if you just cover the local papers, a lot of times you can get free coverage. I am inspired to partner with you and do the work, but I didn't know the word existed. So you have to find an avenue. You have to find an avenue.
I want to address that, what you just said. My mother is 84 now, but when I started to work about like you, Dr. Ulysses, she was like, you quitting your job in finances to do this? It wasn't until I showed her my first check that she realized, oh, I keep the kids for you. She really thought that AIDS and HIV was not a thing anymore because it wasn't being expressed and talked about. But I had to understand that was her circle. So depending on how you navigate your life, that determines what information is gathered. So it's not that it's not being talked about. It maybe we're not attached to the right and assigned to the right circle that will give that information. But thank you so much. We gotta get to the president. I'll come back to you.
Anybody else want to speak?
Yes, we'll let him go. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
My experience is sort of dated. Our mother out of Mississippi, but in Beaumont, Texas at the time, she had an illness that was called the lockjaw. And at that particular point in time, unless Almighty God God said something different in terms of that community, your mother was going to die. Our mother was going to die. And we who were her children, who were separated from her, but fortunately, you all were talking about the hand up, not hand out. That was a group of women who had what you call a Dorcas society. Dorcas, in the Bible.
Okay.
Dorcas. And so to be brief, I want to say that when I'm listening to you all discuss contemporary in the last 30 or 40 years, I hear those additionally being built safety nets and safety nets within person, places, and things. And right to this day, I was dreaming about one of the women who was over this Dorcas Center where my sister and I were living. And I started writing more on my biography. And I thought it was very interesting because even though I probably don't look to be in 75 in 10 months, because I jump rope and I'm learning how to double dutch. Let me just shut down there because what I'm hearing is godly, medical, scientifically, medical, these safety nets are, in my estimation, Twin Towers plus.
Yes, sir.
I think most of you know me. I'm Dr. Vanan. It's been, I'm not going to tell my age, okay? It's been 37 years of my marriage with HIV. I'm a blood specialist and I take care of cancer patients and sickle cell patients. And then some patients came to me with blood problems, and as it turned out that they had HIV. So it's been 37 years journey. We did almost all the studies you can think of or heard of for prevention of transmission of HIV from mother to child and treatment of HIV infection right here at Howard. But you know, intersection of faith and medicine was actually never a problem. The closer I got to my faith, I'm a Muslim. I learned Arabic just to understand Quran and scripture. The more I learn, you know, the more it makes me believe in medicine, but also treating human beings as humans. Because as such, God is like sunshine. You know, it falls on everybody. The mercy of God is for everybody.
Yeah.
And repeatedly, Quran says about Muhammad that you are the best of the human being because you are so merciful to everybody. And there are so many examples of his empathy are endless, where the people who wanted him killed, he was out there protecting them, never even killed them. So the more deeper I get into it, the more it makes me want to do more for those who are broken, who are downtrodden, and Prophet, before Muhammad died, in his last sermon, all he talked about were those who were suppressed the most. He talked about how you treat women. He talked about black and white, that no white has superiority over black, and no black has superiority over a white, and no Arab has superiority. All of it, if you look through it, the last sermon is all about human rights and dealing with protection of those who are downtrodden. So I find my calling in taking care of HIV fully from my life. And every day, I honest to God, it strengthens me. But what pulled me into it, you know, it was the family. Because once they got to know me, they wouldn't let go. I have people, I'm a pediatrician, that got yelled at by everybody from our faculty practice plan that what are you doing with 38-year-old patient? What are you doing for you? I may let them go, but they won't let me go. And so many of those have become mothers or grandmothers, and they would make an appointment for their child. So they sneak into my clinic. So it's been, if I look at my life, it's been the biggest blessing for me. I learned about humanity I would have never learned. But I also learned about brokenness, after all these years, 25-year-old, 27-year-old, becoming a mother, and hardly anybody knows about herself. And I say, would you come to Stigma Conference? It will be a $100 gift card for a affected. He says, no, Dr. Ryan, you can't make me do that.
I have to keep a schedule, even though he's the president of this. You still got to get out here at 3 o'clock. So I respect you, but I respect the time that you said too. What I am going to do, give us a nugget of what we need to do to keep our story vibrant. Simple nugget could be a 1-2 page, not page, but sentence. But what can we do? Because everybody in here has a story, whether we're living with it or living with someone and walking side. Y'all got it? All right, Dr. Bells?
I just think we need to tell our stories authentically. Too often, we only half tell it, or only tell the good parts. And we need to tell the whole story.
Dr. Bird?
So I'll speak from a clinician standpoint. Most of my career has been founded on statistics, stats, information, informing people with the right facts. But information informs, stories transform. And so if we're going to really impact people, we have to move from a place of just information to shift to a place of transformation. Because stories have the ability to change people. And so I can leave here with anything as it relates to a conversation specifically around HIV and faith. The facts, the stats are important for a medical disease, but it's not the whole story. The story is what transforms. So be about both the correct information, but also be about those authentic stories that help us to empathize with lived experiences that we can't otherwise identify with.
And I want to keep it short. When we read the Bible or the Quran, or because I'm a person that respects everybody's faith, I know where I'm at, right? But they had stories in those books, right? And we attached our lives to those stories so we can feel better about ourselves. Storytelling saves lives.
You know you're not supposed to say that. Yes, ma'am.
I gave it out in the first book, 2023, and it came from where I came from 14 to now. I was abused. I got 14 years clean sober. I'm not in this relationship. I just want to say the story was great. Thank you guys. Put me in tears. But my story is being told right now.
That's right.
We're going to leave on that right now. Hey, God bless you. May never smile for you. Have a good one. And you can contact these lovely people that we want to welcome to assign themselves to you.
Please stay in my response.
That's it.
Oh,